So did you guys know that the loudest sound ever recorded was actually produced by a volcanic eruption? This is the eruption of a large volcano that's located in Indonesia that erupted in 1883. Today we're going to learn about one of the most famous volcanoes in history, known as Krakatoa, also known as Krakatoa by locals. Natural disasters occur pretty much every second of every day at some point around the world. Volcanoes, which are typical on the smaller side of these disasters, can also be one of the most destructive. According to a 2018 article posted by History.com, the 1883 eruption of Krakatoa was one of the world's first global catastrophes due to the recent installation of a worldwide telegraph network. So right after this eruption occurred, pretty much everyone around the world knew about it. Today we're going to look about the basics about volcanoes, the volcanic explosive index, the 1883 eruption of Krakatoa, and the most recent eruption of Krakatoa in 2018. Firstly, let's learn a little bit about the basics of volcanoes. Volcanoes can form in a couple of different ways. They're very commonly found at tectonic plate boundaries, especially at subduction zones. Subduction zones are where one plate actually gets forced underneath another plate, and this downward force of the bottom plate melts the end of that plate, and the presence of magma near the Earth's surface actually creates these volcanoes. The best example of this is the Pacific Ring of Fire found all around the Pacific Ocean. According to an article posted by National Geographic that I found on October 22nd, 2019, the Pacific Ring of Fire is home to about 450 volcanoes, or roughly 3/4 of all volcanoes around the world. The yellow line you see going around the Pacific is where volcanoes can be found, and every single black dot is actually a volcano. Although there are volcanoes found all around the world, there are really only 3 different types of volcanoes. There's a shield cone volcano, which is the least explosive. There's a cinder cone volcano, which is the most explosive. And there's a stratovolcano, which falls in between the other two. The shield cone shown here is Mauna Loa, found in Hawaii. The cinder cone shown here is Paracutin, found in Mexico. And the stratovolcano here is Mount Fuji, found in Japan. The volcano I'm discussing today is a stratovolcano. Now that we know about a little bit about volcanoes themselves, let's actually see how scientists actually rank volcanic eruptions. Scientists use a scale called the VEI, otherwise known as the Volcanic Explosive Index, to actually rank the size of a volcano's eruption. It is mainly based off of how much material the volcano actually erupts, but it also takes into account the duration of the eruption and the actual height of the eruption itself. According to an article posted by Geology.com that I found on October 22nd, 2019, the scale is logarithmic, meaning that each step up in number is 10 times more powerful than the last number. It's sort of like the Richter scale used for earthquakes, and as soon as you hit an 8 on the scale, which is the max number, it means there's at least 1,000 cubic kilometers material ejected, and the volcano is then deemed a supervolcano. The higher up the scale you go, the less the Earth actually sees that level of an eruption. The 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens in Washington was barely a 5. The 1991 eruption of Mount Pinatubo in Indonesia was a 6. And the most recent eruption of Yellowstone, about 640,000 years ago, was an 8 on the scale. It was, in fact, a supervolcano eruption. For reference on the actual size of these eruptions, here's a map of the United States of the 1980 eruption, which is the yellow line at the top left of the screen. And the large triangle that takes up about half the United States is the most recent eruption of Yellowstone. As you can see, it covered about half the United States in ash. The volcano I'm discussing today is a 6 on this scale. Now that we know how to compare eruption sizes and about the basics of volcanoes, let's actually look at the 1883 eruption. Krakatoa was actually the name of a volcanic island, not the name of the volcano itself. The island had 3 volcanic peaks on it that were named Perboatan, Vernan, and Rakata. The dotted line you see were the previous borders of the island, and after the eruption, what you see now is the actual island it was in 1983 at least. On the morning of August 26, 1883, there was a somewhat large eruption, but other than this, nothing else really happened. This is a warning eruption. On the very next morning of August 27, 1883, a massive eruption rocked the entire island, and all 3 volcanic peaks erupted simultaneously, and it produced the loudest sound ever recorded at 173 decibels. For reference, most fire alarms in the United States are about 65 decibels, and you actually start to have hearing loss at 85 decibels. This is possibly the loudest sound, this is the loudest sound in recorded history. According to a 2018 article by History.com, the eruption was actually so powerful that it completely disintegrated the island. The island, after the eruption, there was actually a 120-foot high tsunami from the eruption itself, from the caldera collapsing inward. And this tsunami destroyed 165 nearby villages on the surrounding islands and killed 36,000 people to go along with it. The sound from this eruption was also so loud and so widespread that it could be heard up to 3,000 miles away, which is the second picture shown. It could be heard all the way from inland China all the way to the southern Australia. So people all around, or about half the world, heard of this eruption. The pressure difference from this eruption was also so powerful that every single barometer around the surface of the world actually measured this, the pressure change. This is also possibly the largest explosion to occur in human history. Now that we know about the historic 1883 eruption, let's actually look at the recent eruption of Krakatoa in 2018. Recently, in December of 2018, the volcano now named Anak Krakatoa, which literally translates to the child of Krakatoa, had a somewhat large eruption that also destroyed most of the island, but luckily is nowhere near as catastrophic. This right here that you see is the island after the eruption, and what you first saw a second ago was an actual mountain formation, which, as now shown here, is completely gone. Luckily, it was nowhere near as catastrophic as the 1883 eruption, but unfortunately there were casualties. So now I hope you have a better understanding of how volcanoes actually form, about the volcanic explosive index, the 1883 eruption of Krakatoa, and the most recent eruption of Krakatoa in 2018. Remember that volcanoes can be found all around the world and are one of the world's most destructive natural disasters. Lastly, although we do not live near any active volcanoes, this does not mean we're completely safe from one. The Yellowstone supervolcano has the potential to cover most of the United States in feet of ash and could register in North America as uninhabitable. To make things worse, we are overdue for an eruption. Imagine how loud this could be.